Marketing is an act of telling a story and creating a narrative so that those that truly have this problem or this aspiration, they can see themselves in that story and they can see and feel that it's something that they need and resonate with. Again, it's not being naive. There are plenty of people out there with bad intentions. So what? What does that have to do with me? If I embody the predator, I don't become a predator, but I can see the predators. And I also now will never be the prey. The whole thing is love serving love, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Selling with Love podcast. And I am so excited about the conversation we're going to have today with Rydall, who is actually the best-selling author of Emergence, 7 Steps for Radical Life Change. The man has been a leader in the space of personal growth and working with top executives from companies such as Walt Disney, American Express, and also a lot of celebrities who are Oscar and Emmy winners, helping them create conscious entertainment, influencing the world from these top leaders to really make the world better and helping people keep their mental sanity in the process. He is actually running the Emergence podcast, which is named after the same principle that we're definitely going to speak about, the law of emergence. And the Abundance Project, 40 Days to More Wealth, Health, Love, and Happiness, is one of his key initiatives helping people truly have success in all areas of life. And what I'm very curious about the conversation today is we're going to see, where does sales lie in the space of growing personally, self-help, and is it something that we should resist, embrace, and so much more. Derek, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, man. It's really my honor to be here.
This is actually our second conversation. I had you while we had a conversation around abundance. And I was so excited to bring you here because you bring so many principles to help people live abundantly. You've helped thousands of people when it comes to embracing concepts of personal growth, even rewriting the rules of what personal growth should look like. And where I wanted to start today is this whole aspect of sales. Is it something that in your journey has been something you've resisted, you've embraced? What's the relationship you've had with sales in your journey?
Absolutely. I mean, it was something I resisted for a long time and had a lot of judgment about, and would look out at all these people selling. And, I just had so much judgment. It was a very, just not a good feeling. It felt like I was trying to get something. It felt like I shouldn't have to ask. I shouldn't have to sell. And what I discovered in my journey is all of my resistance, or most of my struggle and my resistance to selling, was, first of all, not understanding what is really happening in that experience, and that it's not really a transactional experience. It's actually one of the most powerful transformational experiences. And my whole journey has been about, I'm looking for the principles of truth that I can find across domains and across disciplines. And whenever I can find it in many disciplines or domains, I know I'm on to the deeper truth. So I began to look at what's really happening in the sales experience. There's some kind of exchange. It looks like someone's trying to get something from somebody on one level, but on the other level, someone is trying to find something and get something for themselves, and someone else is trying to help them get it. And then I began to look around in my life and see all the things that I value so much. My wife, my home, my car, the books that had changed my life, whatever, all these beautiful things in my life. And I realized someone somewhere had to care enough about themselves first and what they had to offer, believe they had something that could add value to someone's life or the world. And they had to be courageous enough or committed enough to do the hard work necessary to put it in the world in such a way that those that could use it would recognize the value. And then in many cases, they had to be willing even to sometimes do the hard work of making sure people could see the value and could see past their own fears and resistance and struggle to get the value, right? If my wife didn't have the courage to enroll me in her and sell me, even when I thought she was a crazy hippie and didn't work on paper, I wouldn't have the love of my life. So she had to have a lot of courage. She both had to love herself enough to know that she had something to bring, and she had to see in me what I needed and wanted enough to not let me off the hook when I came up with all of my excuses for why I couldn't. Not to mention all the many things convincing me to go on to travel, to go on vacation. She's been selling me the whole time. And she had to sell. I was talk about objections. I was full of them, but she was willing to keep reducing the resistance and getting over my objections, not letting me play small, not letting me win an argument that would actually cause me to lose. So that's what everybody is doing when they're selling. Now, certainly some people are doing it for different reasons, but at the highest level or the deepest level, I discovered that marketing is an act of of telling a story and creating a narrative so that those that truly have this problem or this aspiration that really need something to be more of themselves or live a more full life, they can see themselves in that story and they can see and feel that it's something that they need and resonate with it. So that's the marketing story. And then the sales story is I care so much about you that I know, like a doctor, doctors have to be great salesperson. People don't want to take their medicine. And some doctors, it's like, oh, should I really sell them all of this medicine? They're going to think I'm hard selling them if I'm just working for the pharmaceutical company. But they know this person does need this much medicine. And they're not, that the person might not like them. They might think they're a jerk. They might have to say some things to this person that seem like they're fear mongering. But the doctor's job is, I believe this is the medicine you need to help you, and I'm going to sell you as much that you need and no less. Otherwise, that there's a word for that. It's called malpractice. And so the same thing is true with the salesperson. They believe this person needs something based on what the person is saying, and they're willing to hold them in that tension of desire and danger and comfort and tension. They're willing to hold them there and not withhold or not draw back when the person fights them or defends or comes up with all of their reasons why they can't. But they're not doing it to get something. They're doing it because they believe this person has said to them in one way or another, they want something, they want to be something, they want to do something. There's more potential in them, and they're going to help them through that difficult conversation, which is really helping the person through the difficult conversation in their own mind to get them to finally get what they need, because humans do not change unless there's extreme pain or extreme pleasure. Otherwise, we will keep coming up with a reason to stay the same. So that's what I discovered sales was. And once I got that, man, and I realized I was on the same side of the table, not across from them, holding their hand and going, what do you want? Who do you want to be? What do you need to be that? I think this can help you. Do you think that can help you? Yes. So you want this, right? Yes. All right, let's figure out a way for you to get it. So I wasn't selling them my product. I was selling them their potential, their dream. So that's now sales is one of the funnest conversations, and it's one of the most transformational conversations. If I'm selling them into a program, many times that's the most transformational part of the whole journey if it's done right.
All right, we've went to the same school. We seen the promised land in a very similar lens. I'm so happy you're here and sharing this, because this is kind of what I've been beating the drum about. And I guess one thing I need to say is, most people listening to this podcast hear this and we're all like, hell yeah. But the reality is that there's not always this great intention sales experience, which is what's left a bitter taste in the mouth for the majority of us. And so maybe one of the questions I want to follow up on that is, if I'm someone who's like, hell yeah, that's how I want to sell. That's how I want to assume most salespeople are coming to me with that same type of energy. Do I still like, what are some of the things I need to look out for? Should I have a fearful instinct? Is it overridden with this, this better vision mindset? Because there's a part of me that's afraid that, oh my God, if I walk around in the world thinking everybody's selling the way that me and you are talking about how sales should happen, but they're a bad actor, will I lose my shirt?
Exactly. And so, first of all, of course, not everybody's coming from that place. Now, at the deepest level, and depending on where you are in your journey, spiritually or otherwise, like for me as a spiritual practitioner and a seeker of truth and a keeper of wisdom in this whole journey, My commitment is no matter how you're showing up, I'm committed to seeing who you really are. And I'm committed to being available if it's available. It's not pushing it, but whatever the conversation needs to be so that you also see who you are. And so knowing that, that allows you to be very aware of, what's really going on. But there's another side to this. Wherever I see somebody and I have a judgment and I think they're snake oil salesman, they're greedy, they're selfish, they're pushy, they're aggressive, oh, whatever, that whenever I get triggered by all the salespeople, let's say, which I did, that judgment is not telling me what's true necessarily about them. It's telling me, showing me the edge of my own map of reality. It's showing me where my understanding of that territory is in shadow. And so when I can say, greedy, selfish, aggressive, mean, capitalist pig, whatever the judgment is, and I can do the process to find that part in me and embrace that part and understand it and ultimately integrate it. I don't become a greedy, selfish, capitalist pig, but I do now have access to all of the energy and the power and the strength that it takes to hold a person, sometimes in a very difficult conversation, even if, and I say to my students and people all the time, my job and my commitment is to your flourishing and your success, even if it means you hate me, even if it means you think I'm a jerk. I don't care what you think about me. I care that you get what you really, really need to be who you really, really are. And that's what's going on. And so, what this is like, sometimes our job is to comfort the afflicted, but sometimes it is to afflict the comfortable. And you're not going to be able to afflict the comfortable and say, listen, dude, or listen, woman, whatever you're talking to, you say you want this, right? And you're giving me all these excuses. What do you want? Like, you can be strong, but it's fierce love. It's not pushy. It's truly fierce heart selling, not hard selling. But I couldn't do that when I had all these judgments because I was holding back in all these places. I didn't have the full spectrum of emotion or color or power to be used by love in that moment, because love is not just nice. Love is not just namby-pamby. Jesus didn't just walk around going, oh, let us pray. He was like cracking a whip and turning over tables and saying, get the hell out of here. Wake up, people. And same with all the great teachers. They were fierce. Mother Teresa was not just this sweet little old lady, right? She would walk into a company and ask for a big check. And if that check wasn't big enough, she would sit down and go, I guess I need to pray a little longer. And then they would go in the back and come out with a bigger check. So it's being loving is not being a pushover. You need to have a backbone, not a wishbone. And so as I saw all these people selling or whatever successful, and it triggered me, but I integrated that, then I could have the strength and the courage and the character and the wherewithal to hold people, not just in selling, by the way, but if you're a coach, if you're a transformational teacher, facilitator, or coach, and you really want to help people have change, remember, the selling doesn't stop once you've sold the program. You're selling them on themselves every step of the way, right? You're helping them see who they are, and you're fiercely and sometimes softly holding them through the process of enrolling in their own life. And so, but if you're not enrolled in your life, if you're not fully enrolled in the vision, that's going to become the place where you can't enroll them. And so that's what I saw in this process. Again, it's not being naive. There are plenty of people out there with bad intentions. And so what? What does that have to do with me? If I'm embodying this work, and if I embody the predator, I don't become a predator, but I can see the predators. And I also now will never be the prey. So that's the embodiment process of the full polarity, right? Like Rumi said, out beyond right and wrong, there's a field. I'll meet you there. So we have to get beyond right and wrong. We have to embrace, as Jesus said, love your enemy. And where did he say the enemy was? In your own household. So he was talking about meeting all those parts in us that we judge, that we hate, that we fear. And when you do that in the world, then you bring it into yourself. You become a welcome environment. You cannot be taken advantage of easily, and you will not take advantage of others. You will be a safe clearinghouse where people can bring all of themselves and not feel judged for wherever they're at. And as a result, they'll begin to let down the barriers and the armor and reveal who they really are. Because the bottom line is there's only one thing we all really want, and that is to be seen. And there's only one thing we're most afraid of, and that is to be seen. And so when somebody has been willing to look at themselves, fully enroll themselves, take themselves through all their objections, now they're able to let another person drop all the armor and drop all the defenses so that they can be seen. And then once they can be seen, now you can help them to be who they really are. That's, to me, again, the enrollment process is ongoing in terms of sales, through service, through transformational leadership, etc.
Amen to that, Derek. Like, what I love with your answer, and I'm so on board with this, is that not only do you become so much more effective in every way that you sell to be able to bring more success into your life, but you've completely obliterated the objection here, which is if you're thinking that having this positive mindset, embracing sales with love is going to make you naive, nothing could be further from the truth. Instead, you become laser detector of all these things because you've integrated that part and you can smell it. If someone's trying to take advantage of you, you can actually have the courage to ask the difficult questions that would actually reveal the wolf in the
Exactly.
sheep's clothing, right? So,
And even turn the wolf into a sheep again. And
ooh,
that's the
little
key.
alchemy.
Yeah, it's like, if I meet a salesperson that's trying to do the slick willy, kind of, um, if I want something, if I want to get a new car or a new stereo or whatever, I'm going to still use them to help ask me the hard questions. And I'm still going to have an authentic conversation. And I've watched this happen from the slick salesman person kind of thing. I know I'm saying salesman. It does tend to be men that are the more aggressive, but not always, certainly. And and that not only can I, when I'm the person selling, disarm the person and help them see who they are and what they really want and help them get it, but when I'm the person who wants the thing, I can help the person who may have not the greatest motives or not be fully conscious, watch them actually get transformed into a person who is actually in service to me. And you see them get lit up. They're like, dude, like, they're not just thank you for buying from me. They're like, thank you for helping me really serve you. And so you can transform both sides of the equation.
Yes. One of the things I speak a lot about is that for those who are in a situation where they are, from your buyer's perspective, you feel like they're maliciously selling to you, there's usually a story in their life as to why they feel they need to do that, where we need to practice empathy. And what you've just shared is exactly that. I will admit, maybe you'll agree with me, um, doing what we're all saying right now demands more energy, but it's worth it. But we need to we're basically making the case for people to be like, hey, selling this way and operating in life this way will demand more energy, but the
Right.
fruits are way juicier.
Yeah. The fruits are, I mean, ultimately, at the very, very baseline, the whole thing is love serving love, right? It's like love serving the truth so that it can flower into more life. And when that love and truth is fully embodied, it becomes beauty. That's the whole circuit of creation. And so all we're doing is learning how to love better, love ourselves better, which means what do I really want? What's really true about me? What's really the God in me that wants to be born? Loving that means finding out what I really need and then finding a way to get it and being willing to get over the challenges. That's the first two commandments: love God with all your heart and soul, and it's within you, and love your neighbor as yourself. Now, love then extends itself from there and goes, what do you need, my beloved? Whether it's my wife, my kids, or a stranger or a client, Now I'm in service to you to help you. And then it becomes this renewing and regenerative circuit. So it does take energy to activate that potential in us, just like it takes energy to go to the gym and lift a weight that's heavier than you're used to. And you tear the muscles and you get exhausted, but then as that makes an evolutionary demand on your system, which will only happen if you lift a weight heavier than you can, it says, we need to get better, we need to get stronger. And it pulls energy and resources from a place you don't even know. And suddenly now you have more energy, more muscle, more capacity. So while it takes energy initially, it ultimately builds up greater capacity so that now you can hold more energy. You are a bigger conduit. You've gone from a 50-watt light bulb to a 100-watt light bulb. And the electricity is everywhere. The problem isn't the lack of electricity. The problem is the big enough capacity. And so you're not getting energy just from in your body and in your cells. Energy is omnipresent. You're an instrument or a transformer or a conduit of it, but you have to build up the capacity to hold more energy. And you can only do that by doing hard things, by having a worthy goal that's bigger than your current capacity in service of something that matters. And then when you lift that weight or you do that hard thing in service, you you tear these micro tears of capacity. It makes a bigger demand. And now your brain, your mind, your heart, you don't just develop a runner's heart, you develop a lover's heart that has greater capacity to love. And you develop strength that has greater capacity to hold a person in all of their emotions or all of their challenges. And there's not a blip in the field. That's there within potential. It takes energy first, but then you have more capacity and therefore more energy as a result.
Following that statement, I feel like the response properly is hell freaking yes.
Hell to the yeah.
And honestly, I think you're speaking to the choir here because anybody listening to this podcast, I feel what you're speaking about is a vocalization of what you've seen as the promised land. And this is where we're trying to bring as many people as possible. And I want to bring it down to reality and maybe on the practical, which is if I'm listening to this and I'm like, Derek, Jason, what you guys are saying, like, yes, this is what I want. I'm dedicated to impact. I'm dedicated to transformation. Like, this is why I want to do the types of things that I want to do. I want to help the world. I also oftentimes want to help a version of myself from the past that I could distill some of these tools, some of this knowledge. That's very often what I see the story is for somebody who wants to do this kind of work. And then the sales aspect, it's like, yeah, but my God, I feel so much resistance doing anything that smells or looks like sales. I feel like I stutter, and when I'm having a conversation, I'm nervous about talking about price. I feel like I could give it all for free, but like I don't want to appear needy. And so for someone who's coming in this like fear, like I want this, but the reality is I feel far from it. Are there some of the recommendations you give as initial steps, things that people could consider that would help them at least lift a 2-pound dumbbell to start?
Yeah, well, there's a few things, and you can start minimally. The first thing, and of course, some people are in situations where they're selling things that aren't theirs. They've been hired as sales coaches and things, and that's a little different, although the thing still has to be the case that you have to find within you whatever it is you're selling. And let's just take for now, you're selling your own thing, your product, your service, your art, your whatever. And and the thing is you have to first of all do the work, and this is an ongoing work, to know what you're really made of and made for. And know that what it is you're creating or what you're offering, you've done the work so that this isn't just some idea you pulled out of the air or pulled out of some book, that there's something about it that lives in you. It's what I call the life code, that your life story is encoded with your life's work. And whatever it is you're creating, as I say, the workshop you've been living is the one you're meant to be giving. So as you begin to understand that whatever it is you're offering, it comes from inside. It's the fruit of your lived experience on some level, whether it's research, whether it's pain and suffering, there's something about it you've actually lived. and done. If you're trying to sell people on how to make $1 million and you've only ever made 1,000 or 100,000, that's not what you should be selling. But you could still be selling them something around abundance if you look at your journey of all that you've had to come through to begin to even have a life of some abundance. That's still valuable. But don't try to think it's got to look like how to make 6 figures in 6 weeks, or because that's not going to be an integrity. And that's the first mistake. If it's not truly something that's lived and embodied, and there's always a way to position it so that it has enough value and the right value for the right person. But you first have to make sure it's authentic and it's integral to you. Because again, I've worked with lots of people trying to sell stuff. And that's the first thing. They're creating these workshops or books or all these things, and they're clever ideas and they're things they aspire towards, but it's not really coming from them. And somewhere along the line, they just know. They can't hold it. When I'm telling you what I'm telling you right now about selling and enrolling, I can sell it to you, man. And if I had to charge you for it, I would charge you without a moment's notice if that would mean you'd get it, because I know it. I've lived it. But 20 years ago when I got started, I didn't know a lot of this stuff. So I had to sell and teach based on what I did know. And then I had to position it and package it in a way that would speak to my audience in the place on the journey where they were, which is a few steps behind where I was. But there was still plenty of people there. And then when I got a few steps forward, I carried them with me. And then I could also sell to the people that were where I was a few steps ago, and on and on and on. And there's plenty of people. There's always a tribe or a client base, or as I said, God has saved out a portion for you. And so there's always enough people. If you really want to serve, your desire to serve and the need of service are not separate. They're part of a gestalt. And so if you want to serve and you're willing to get clear on what that is, your people are there. I promise you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when you're developing your offering, and these are some practical things, is you have to begin to do the work to really pack into that offer, not just say, well, it's $100 or it's 1,000 or it's 2,000 because everybody charges $19.97 for their programs nowadays or whatever. You have to go, you have to find as many ways as you can to find the real intrinsic value. So for example, you might say, well, how much time, energy, money did it legitimately take me to discover this, to trial this out, to work this out, to figure this out? I've been struggling and working. I've paid tens of thousands of dollars, whatever, on courses or my own trial and error, launching and failing businesses, whatever, in order to get this knowledge. Now, what that means in essence is that, let's just say there's $100,000 worth of failure or education that you, Bob or Sue, don't have to go through or pay for. And I can give that to you in this program. That's real. Now, that doesn't mean they'll take advantage of it, but that's a first step. Load that value in. Then people think, well, how can I charge $500 or $1,000, or for me, $3,000 for an hour of coaching? Well, I'm not charging you for the hour. I'm charging you for the 25 years and the $1 million and the pain and suffering that I went through that will allow me to deliver so much value to you in 1 hour so that you don't have to go through all that. And now, again, it's up to you if you'll take the full advantage of that ticket to the gold mine. But the only reason I can give that to you is because I've spent 100 times that or 1,000 times that. And that's the same thing with a lawyer. They're not charging you $1,000 an hour for 60 minutes. They're charging it for the 15 years or 20 years of school and hard work and long nights and, whatever, acid reflux, whatever else they've gone through. That's what you're paying for so that you don't have to. So you load that into it. And then you go, now, if somebody actually takes what I'm giving them and uses it fully, what is possible? And then you play that out. the growth of their business or the healing of their body or the relationships, and you just play it out into as many paths of as you've given that seed and they plant it and they grow it and the tree blossoms and all the branches and fruits and then the seeds of those fruits and new trees and new branches, and you start to get to a sense, are you guys starting to feel it, like, oh my god, this thing is worth millions, and then you go, this is worth millions, and then you go, okay, I'll sell it for 1,000. But now you've got a $997, but when you're saying that to them, you're like, this is worth millions. And so energetically and truthfully, it's not a lie. You're giving them an energetic $1,000,000 offer. And, and of course, there's other things you can do. You can add bonuses in all kinds of ways. But the thing is, do the work to load in like an incantation into that offering. So when you say that number, when you sell that offer, not only are you going to be like, you know, you're so much bigger than that offer that it's going to feel like a deal. So those are some of the things. And I'll say one last thing real quick. We probably don't have time to get into it this time, but the other thing, as I said earlier, is understand that when you're in the process of selling and you hit those bumps and you feel afraid or you feel like you're being greedy or selfish or you feel sorry for them or whatever the thing is, what you're really bumping into is a shadow. You're bumping into a judgment. So if you can slow it down or look at the tapes after, so to speak, like athletes do. Okay, right there, I was like, what was I feeling? I was feeling like, oh my God, I hope they don't think I'm being greedy or selfish. I hope they don't think I don't care about them, or oh my God, they're going to think I'm so not spiritual. How could I be spiritual if I'm selling and charging all this money? And then you slow it down and you feel the feeling, you write it out, you write the story that you're telling yourself, and you'll start to see judgments. That's not spiritual. That's not kind. If I was really a good person or really spiritual, I would give it for free. And you'll start to see the false beliefs and the shadows. And even without going into the whole shadow process, which by the way, you guys can get it for free at my website, you if you just take those judgments like selfish, greedy, unspiritual, shallow, and you just begin to recognize that's a part of you that is not understood. That's the enemy in the household that needs you to love. And if you're willing to then be with that part, really seek to understand it, to hear it, to hold it, and to ask, what do you need from me so that you can take your rightful place in my life? You will start to make that enemy an ally, as we talked about earlier, and you will reintegrate that. And what will happen is you will recognize the gift and the value of the selfish or greedy parts, and you will now be more available to be a channel of love and service in helping that person get what they need and charging them enough so it locks in the value so that they're not going to betray their own desire as often because now you've locked in. So those are a few things. I know that's maybe not 2-pound dumbbell, maybe that's more of a full workout, but that's what I would invite people to do.
You gave us the full workout, the whole Hyros training. So I'm very grateful that you've shared all this. And yes, for everybody, we'll have the link to derekrydall.com/free-trainings. There's a ton of free stuff you guys can go through, including the shadow dancing stuff that I think will be very, very relevant if any of the things that he just mentioned is exactly how you're feeling.
Yes.
Derek, this whole thing's been a masterclass, and I'm so grateful for this conversation. There's one thing I wanted to speak on, which you've danced around, and I'm going to go right into it, which is the difference between when you're selling your own product versus selling someone else's product. And here's what I've noticed is, well, for one, I'd love to know some of your advice for someone who is selling someone else's products and having struggles to connect with that viscerally. And second, I want to speak about the people, myself included, where I find more ease selling someone else's product than selling myself. The moment it
Totally.
becomes yourself, it seems like there's so much more on the line, and that
Totally.
I see being a much bigger problem.
Yes, yes, yes. Great, great distinction. I'm glad you brought that up. It's absolutely true. So the first thing about selling someone else is just in the sense where it might be difficult. And I did, I mean, that's where most people start. Whether it's just selling phone books or door-to-door knives or, I sold multi-level marketing stuff, and soap and whatever the crazy stuff was, and had a downline and a network. But what I found in it was, what was the real purpose? What was the real opportunity from a human, psychological, universal place? What's the real possibility and the real value? Even though some of it was packaged in a way that was clearly about, make the money and all this kind of stuff. That's what I got. And it was also an opportunity again to just practice and get better at at positioning things and presenting things in a way that people could see the value in it, see what was in it for them, see how I was really selling them their story, their dream, their potential. So whatever it is, if you have to sell it for whatever reason, you must do your best to find in it what is truly valuable, and in it what about it you value and you can relate to, and you get to tell a story that brings it out and makes it personal to you. And, and of course, sometimes there just may be no way. And at the end of the day, that's probably not where you should be, right? Some people can do it, and that's probably not the people listening here. But because if all they care about is money, they'll say whatever they have to say to sell the thing, right? So, but you'd be surprised as an exercise how you can find the value and the gift in almost anything, and how you can find a place where you can speak about it personally to them and to yourself. And just as an exercise, as a training ground, that's really powerful. So when it comes to selling our own thing, yeah, it's very common. It's a good distinction. We can sell other people's stuff easier because even though there's some of the normal stakes of selling and all that stuff and the yuckiness of it, it doesn't feel so, like, personal. Like when you put yourself out there and somebody says no, they're not just rejecting your steak knives, they're rejecting your soul, right? And so when you're selling your own stuff and you dare to charge for your soul and your heart, you know, so it starts to feel, and your art, like your voice, and you think, what do you have that's worth anything, And so it really gets at a very existential and a very archetypal and primal level. And again, that's why when I help people and train them into enrolling people, I call it the infinite enrollment process. It's it is really a process of becoming fully enrolled in you, like really falling in love with you, falling in love with what life made as you, beginning to value and appreciate what it's taken to become you, and to be able to bring forth the fruit that you have, and to get over these unworthiness stories and wounds and all of that. And the journey of discovering what is it that I have to offer and getting strong enough to offer it is really a journey of owning and selling yourself to you, selling yourself back to you. And maybe for the first time, maybe in your whole life, nobody has ever really sold you to you. They've sold you a bill of goods, and they've tried to talk you out of the sale about you. No, no, but this is your chance to finally make the sale and buy yourself. And that's powerful. And again, then if you get into enrolling others, you get to find out where are all the little glitches where you haven't fully bought yourself. And that's why it's so exciting and so powerful and it's so transforming.
Hell yeah. Derek, honestly, I'm so excited by how aligned everything you're saying is exactly what I've been beating the drum on. I'll tell you a funny story. My book, Selling with Love, there's a whole process about love the impact, love the buyer, love the product, love the process. And the final one is actually self-love. And I
Yes.
find my whole book is a Trojan horse to get people excited about making more sales when at the end of the day, the whole process is a self-love discovery process. Okay. And what I preach is that if you're trying to grow as fast as possible, like when you see yourself becoming more successful in sales, that means you're accelerating your personal growth like nobody's business, because you get so close to all the insecurities, all the shadows, because you're
Exactly.
relating to people every single time.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
And then when supply and demand constraints cause you to have to raise your prices, do I really love myself? Do I
s-
really believe I'm going to lose everybody? Oh my God, do I dare? And like even the stretch exercise, like I want to just find out how much capacity. Let me just raise my prices and then be like to the point where I'm like, "Eh, okay, now let's close that gap." And when you get there, you find not only do you have more power and more love when you're doing it for that reason, you have even more capacity to hold people and take them to the next level. Somebody has to go first, and then they up the mountain, and then they pull you up. So it's like, all right, guys, I'm going to the next peak. All right, I'll see you. I'll pull you with me, but I'm first going to go. And it's like as you raise your rates or scale your offer or scale the opportunity, these we talk in terms of business and all this stuff, but it's really scaling love, scaling your true self until eventually you're as there's no limit to how big you can be, which is there's no limit to how big love or God or truth can be. And now you're big enough to serve and to hold and to love everyone. That's the ultimate.
I'm going to give a shout out to Julia and Kemi, who are two clients I work with that had this exact thing happen to them. And I'm so glad we're talking about it. Derek, this has been a fire masterclass. I'm so grateful for our conversation.
Likewise, brother.
What I want to do is just leave you with one more question I ask every guest on the show, which is, you're on the Selling with Love podcast. Why would you define what selling with love is?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said it in a lot of words, but let's see if I can put in just a few. I would say selling with love is just understanding that love is the force that is in service to the full flowering and flourishing of every being in creation. And so selling is the act of helping the individual to see who they are and to get what they need to fully flower and flourish. And when everybody does that, lo and behold, we're back in the garden again.
Ladies and gentlemen, Derek Rydall joining us on the Selling with Love podcast. This was an absolute gem of an episode. We're going to make sure you go to his website. We'll put a link into the show notes. You can grab all of the resources that are there, free, paid, whatever it is. Go and do that energy exchange so you can make sure you can support when you see resonance with the message you hear. There are further ways you can go down the journey and learn some more. I absolutely had a thrill and a blast on this episode. I'm hoping everybody else on the call is feeling the same vibes. Go out there, sell with love, and know that we are making the world a better place, one sale at a time. Derek,
Yeah.
once again, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, brother. My blessings, my pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to the Selling with Love podcast. We have some previous episodes you can tune into right here. And if you prefer the short form content where you get to the point in under 10 minutes, we do have a ton of clips from our best episodes that are being shared on this channel as well. So pick which one supports you the most. And of course, thank you for liking, subscribing, and of course, selling with love.